Dr. Fandunga, who is the governor of the Central Bank of Zambia. And then Louisa Bojela, who is with Whiphold, which is an investment company in South Africa. The Honorable President of the World Association of Women Entrepreneurs, Françoise Vadingue. Alex Gitari with PTA Bank. And finally, Evelyn Oputu from the Bank of Industry, Nigeria. I just also want to take this opportunity to ask our network members who have taken the time to be with us today to stand up. We have Prudence Vache, Namsa Daniels, who is the acting CEO of New Faces, New Voices, who will be making the presentation on the study. She's here. Reki Musa, who is the CEO of a microfinance bank in Niger called Asusu. Sabata Mwambanje from Tanzania. Jacqueline Bisimoy Marangaza from DRC. Turi Masogli from Cote d'Ivoire. And Amani Asfour from Egypt. So with those introductory remarks, I'd like to invite Namsa Daniels. As I said, Namsa actually is the person that kind of convened and orchestrated the coming together of all these women. She had the ear of Mrs. Michelle, and she has been working in her spare time in the evenings to keep New Faces running, and now she is actually working part-time as the acting CEO of New Faces, New Voices. And I personally would like to thank her for flying the flag and keeping the energy up, and she'll make the presentation on this study. Thanks, Nancy.
In this journey of ours to empower women. Now, we have before us a very exciting panel. And really, it's them we need to hear, not so much me. So, if you will forgive me, I'm going to go through my presentation quite quickly. It's really to set the scene. But the discussion, I think, will really be animated by the experience of the panelists that you see before us. And we felt it was important to begin to unlock the answers to why there continues to be a lack of access to capital for women entrepreneurs. So we've embarked on a study, but it's really an initial assessment. The purpose really was to see how financial institutions serve SMEs, but women in particular. And we wanted to identify several things. We wanted to identify what is currently available in terms of financial services and products, what types of financing mechanisms exist, the infrastructure support, such as credit bureaus. We also wanted to look at policy and regulatory barriers. And lastly, we did this in order to leverage on lessons learned from actual practices in order to strengthen the business case for investing in women. It should be obvious, as Dr. Moyo has said, but it continues to escape the attention of policymakers, most of whom are men. So, for the study we approached about 28 banks. We contacted them, sent them questionnaires, and then a select group were interviewed telephonically. We also undertook a reasonably thorough investigation of existing research to try to identify some of the gaps. And here's what we find. Key finding. Women entrepreneurs, the demand, I should say, for financing in sub-Saharan Africa from women entrepreneurs amounts to an estimated $19 billion US. This is an estimate, but it shows you the extent of the market that is currently being unserviced by financial institutions. Just to put that into context, if you look at the SME financing gap throughout sub-Saharan Africa, it's somewhere in the order of 140 to 170 billion. The formal SME credit gap is between 80 and 100 billion, and the loan demand by women SMEs, as I've said, is 19 billion. So to reduce this financing gap, women require access to working capital, overdraft facilities, credit lines, factoring, some of which are being provided, but certainly not in sufficient degree. Let's turn now just to an overview of businesses in Africa. You'll see that sub-Saharan Africa has 8 to 10% of all SMEs globally, which comes to a figure of roughly between 33 and 44 million. But 69% of these businesses are informal. 21% are formal micro businesses, which we define in this study as having less than 10 employees, and only 10% are formal employees. But when you look at how women are represented, we see that women own an estimated 48% of micro, small, and medium enterprises in Africa. A substantial contribution to this continent in terms of economic development and job creation. The number of micro and small and medium enterprises owned by women is 17 to 21 million. And 10% of SMEs, and women own, I should say, 10% of SMEs with more than 10 employees. The challenge, though, is that most of these businesses that are owned by women are informal micro businesses. The challenge is to grow these businesses from small to medium, from medium to large. As I have stated, women-owned businesses in Africa are still dominated by micro enterprises, but the picture varies across sectors, as you would expect. If you look now at the percent of women-owned manufacturing enterprises, if you just look at the top 4 examples, you'll see that in those countries, women own 40 to 50% of manufacturing firms. Again, this is not a small contribution. But in order to grow these manufacturing enterprises, women require long-term financing. And bank financing is the most important source of financing for these long-term investments. When we did this study, we found a lot of data on microfinance. It's a very rich data which gives you a really good understanding of the cross-section of microfinance institutions, where women are represented, the extent of borrowing by women. And again, if you look at the information provided in this slide, you'll see that within the microfinance market, women are significantly served by a variety of financial institutions. If you just look at large financial institutions and medium, the percentage of women borrowers in these African financial institutions is quite significant. However, when you turn to women-owned SMEs, a different picture emerges. But that picture continues to be a sketchy one due to the lack of data. What were some of the constraints? Most of you sitting in this room, I'm sure, are intimately familiar with some of the constraints that women entrepreneurs face. You have legal constraints, for example, that discriminate against women owning property rights. In several African countries, women are not allowed to own property. As a result, they don't have access to collateral. You also have lack of skills and capacity on the part of women entrepreneurs, which translates into a lack of confidence. Again, there's an inadequate supply of information in the market on the demand from women as well as the supply of financial services. These are all growth barriers. But one of the more important ones is really the lack of readiness from financial institutions to treat women as an important market segment. There are innovative interventions that are being offered, a variety of graduation products, and in the interest of time, I'm really not going to dwell on these very much, but there are, as I said, guarantee schemes, trade finance, short-term credits, private equity, a number of products that are attempting to address the needs of women SMEs. I'm just going to quickly just go through these, but you'll see examples of leasing. In places like Zambia, some of the banks are now trying to go around the collateral issue by providing loans if an individual has a government contract. Among the banks that we looked at, we found only a limited number of them that offer graduation products, and some of these banks are listed here. Anne-Marie alluded to our partnership with the African Development Bank. We have been working with the African Women in Business program, which shares our vision of empowering women economically. And the Afdb has a number of programs in-house that it has initiated and is supporting throughout Africa, which I am going to invite Leila Monkadem at a later point to just come in and elaborate.
Thank you very much, Namsa. The question I asked when I joined the bank 9 years ago is how the African Development Bank is serving 90% of the private sector population in Africa. And the answer was it's not easy because they are small, because they are risky. So one of my former job, because now I'm a resident representative of the Afdb in Senegal, and I was in charge of financial institutions, was to develop a specific approach and strategy to spur the SME growth. I wanted just to share with you at this point some figures, and then I will come back later as a discussant to share with you lessons learned, which I'm sure will feed the discussion. So if we look at the approach, we have a wholesale approach whereby we build on the financial sector infrastructure, and we use commercial banks and other non-banking financial institutions as intermediaries, use them to finance small and medium enterprises. We also have specifically targeted what we call SME niches that we think are an opportunity for Africa, and women in SMEs are one of them. If we look at the total portfolio as of 31st December 2010, we have a total active financial institution portfolio of 61 projects with total approved amount of 2 billion, our units of account multiplied by 100 euros, and at least 40% to them, if not more. We are redoing the assessment, and I think it will go to 50 and even 60% are going to SMEs. Out of